welcome to Unstoppable Agent.
I asked him for advice, and he was mildly successful, and he said, do the stuff, he used another word, but do the stuff no one else wants to do.
Okay.
And that was his advice. And I literally just took that.
Hey, this is the show where real estate agents come to build their business, build their wealth, and build a life of impact and significance. I'm your host, Brian White. I am a real estate agent, associate broker, team leader, and an agent at EXP in Dallas. And I love interviewing agents. This show is about icon agents. Those are the folks that have earned the top 2%. They've become one of the top 2% of agents at EXP out of more than 85,000. So these folks are the best of the best. They've built tremendous businesses, and they've earned a spot on the Icon Award charter. I'm excited today because I'm joined by Aaron Potter from the Kansas City suburb area. So Aaron, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to celebrate you because you mentioned you had just earned your second Icon Award. So that's rare air. There aren't many of you. And so congratulations on a big achievement.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's I'm not one to get caught up on awards a lot, but I'm one of those, look, at the end of the year, you kind of look back and try to okay, there's some good things that happen. And not that I show it to everybody, but it's definitely in my office.
That's great. And what's fun is, okay, so you do have a trophy, or you've got something to celebrate and kind of point to, but you also have a bank account or a stock account with a whole lot of stock in it that you probably don't run around showing that to a lot of people either, but it is there for it is there for the future.
It is, and that was one of the things that attracted me to EXP. It wasn't the only thing by any means, but it definitely was a factor.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. It has to be. Those are big. Those are big numbers. So. We'll get to that in just a minute. I'd love to go back to the beginning and just have you tell us, not like birth or anything, but tell us how you got started in real estate. What caused you to do such a silly thing and bring us up to speed to today?
Yeah, kind of my career, if you will, started after college. I started working at a bank, lived in Arizona for a short time, worked at a bank, a national-wide bank, won't mention their name, and peon at a bank, just doing random stuff. And then I decided after a few years of doing that, moved back to Kansas City, worked at a bank here for many years doing home equity loans and selling credit cards. And that kind of just slowly morphed into then mortgage lending, where I did for 2 years. And then my dad passed away in 2015. And I was going through that motion where I got married, my wife and I had our first kid in 2016. So there's a lot of roller coaster of emotions, if you will. And I was just tired of I'd always thought about doing real estate. I grew up not around it. My mom would drag me to open houses just for fun when I was little. And so I'd always thought about it. And it was one of those things, it's cliche, but I was literally sitting there thinking, if I don't do it, I'm never going to do it. And having the mortgage experience and having the home equity experience was a huge, huge advantage. Basically, understanding how to run a pipeline and understanding how to run a book of business. And I just jumped right in 2017 and hit the ground running. And I basically put some goals in front of myself and said, if I don't do this, I'm going to tuck my tail between my legs and go back to lending. And I'm not going back to lending.
Good. That's great. It's a tremendous business. It's not easy to get started by any stretch of the imagination, but once you get it going, then it's one that can continue to build and end up being tremendously lucrative. So you got started, and it sounds like you hit your goals
I did.
That first year. So what did you do just right out of the gate? How'd you get your first deal? How'd you get started?
I got the normal background, if you will. My very first deal with my stepsister was selling her house, and she wanted to buy a house. So take those out of the equation. I had a friend who was in real estate in a different market, and I asked him for advice, and he was mildly successful. And he said, do the stuff, he used another word, but do the stuff no one else wants to do.
Okay.
And that was his advice. And I literally just took that. And so what I did was I live in a neighborhood, there's 2,400 houses here. It's a small city. And I literally started calling every agent that had a listing. This was 5.5 years ago now. And I begged to work any open houses that were in the neighborhood. And I didn't do it at the time. I'd be lying if I said I had this big grand plan then. I was doing it because it was close to home and I might see some people I know. And I was familiar enough with the neighborhood that I could provide some value, right? And so I literally just started working open houses. I was taking flyers to the neighbors about these open houses. I was knocking on doors, and then I started chasing every for sale by owner. And at that time we had some expired listings, which will soon be here again. But I started chasing those, and I say chasing, but literally aggressively knocking on their door and just saying, hey, like, why don't you give me a chance to sell your house? And I was surprised at how many people said, okay.
Right? You asked and they said yes.
Basically, yeah. It's crazy that if you just ask sometimes what you get.
What I think is interesting is when you talk about not having a grand strategy, the dialing agents in an area is the classic farming. Just get hyper local.
Absolutely.
And you may not have known what you're doing, but when you just get hyper local, and you may not even have had branded signs or anything like that yet, but when you do that and you focus just on a super tight area, well, people are like, oh man, I see his signs every week, man, he must be killing it, he's the expert, I gotta call him.
That's literally exactly what happened. And it didn't take long before that became my niche. And it just, not that I do everywhere else, I do everywhere around the city, but last year 50% of my business, 48% of my business was in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's great.
And it really, it builds upon itself and does itself. Once I figured out what I was doing, I just started I'm a crazy creative person in the terms of I get a lot of ideas and I have to literally write them down in a notepad or on my phone in my notes section, because if I don't, I lose it. And two, I want to be able to go back to it, because some of the stuff that I thought was crazy 5 years ago, I still have in notes that I'm literally putting in plan to do next. I always tell people, I encourage people, do not erase your notes or ideas.
Great. Keep that running list. You told me before the show started that your superpower was in finding niches.
Yep.
Tell me about that. That's a lot of people would say that's an odd superpower. I love it, but a lot of people say that's an odd gift. Tell me about that.
Like I said, I just started in my own neighborhood, and I realized how important. I looked at other agents who are successful around the area, and I talked to a couple of them just during deals or whatever, and I realized, all right, everybody can work off referral, but that takes a while, right? And I had this quite literally, I say this in front of my window, but my neighborhood is literally in my backyard. And I said, you know what? After about a year, I said, I'm just going to focus all of my marketing, all of my energy on, the name of the neighborhood is Lakewood, on Lakewood. Okay. I created a Facebook group for real estate in Lakewood. I literally knocked on, I kid you not, I probably knocked on 1,000 doors out here. And I realized the power of you can specialize and be good at something. I compare it a lot to NBA. I'm a big NBA fan, basketball fan. If you're really good at one thing in basketball, it can take you far. In real estate, you obviously can be good at a lot of things, but if you can specialize in one area or one niche and go, you can just be, essentially, there's no ceiling, is what I've realized. And now that we have a team, we're growing a team, my first thing I say to these agents are, find one. Find a niche. And it doesn't have to be a neighborhood. It can be anything. And I will help you. That's my value. I will help you grow that, but you've got to want it and you got to find it. And it has to, I think one big thing is it has to come naturally to an extent. Yeah. You can't force it. And I knew a lot about my neighborhood. I was lucky enough to, when we bought our first house out here, we kind of house hacked it. We lived here about 2.5 years. We fixed it up, sold it, made some money, bought another one. I did the same thing. And now we're here. And I quickly learned the values of this neighborhood. And it's a different neighborhood. It's a lake community. It's a golf course community. The houses are between anywhere from, there's actually a brand new one right now being built, the last lot, quite literally. So you have they're 1 year old to 50-year-old. So you have to learn that. And I just self-taught myself that niche.
That's great. So when you think about owning a neighborhood Facebook page, is priceless.
Yes.
Were you the first to create a Facebook page for that area, or did you just dominate somebody who was already there?
I was the first. There was a neighborhood Facebook page that has over 2,000 members. They actually do not encourage, they try to keep it essentially more newsworthy, if you will, and they don't want a bunch of posts on it. So ironically, this is actually a really good story. I posted an open house on there one day, and one of the admins, not so kindly, messaged me and said, why don't you start your own? She goes, why don't you start your own page? No one wants to see it on here. And instead of getting angry, I was like, you know what? That's a fantastic idea. I'd already thought about it. It was already in my notes. I kid you not. It was already in my notes to do it. And I had probably 2 hours to kill. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it right now. And I started inviting everybody I knew in the neighborhood, friends, family that weren't necessarily in the neighborhood. And I quickly had 200 followers in a couple days. And so now I think we're over 1,200 followers, which for a neighborhood is huge. And along the way, I've had to make it a private group and kind of secure it in some way. It's been awesome. And I think what I would tell people too is that if you're thinking about that, any sort of social media, Facebook page was great because it literally, I can control all of it. I can control the content, I can control who sees it, and there's so much value in that.
It's great. It really is tremendous. And you can post as much content, the kind of content, you can create events and be the hyper local expert.
And it really started out before I had a lot of listings I could post, or even other people's listings, which I did in the beginning. I was actually just targeting funny things I saw in houses. These houses are very outdated. And so just some of this old traditional stuff you saw 50 years ago, or one thing I talk about all the time is literally a cigar room in a house. It had a vent to the ceiling. It caught on, and people just loved seeing that kind of stuff because it was a look into, I compared it to MTV TV cribs. It was a look into other people's homes.
Yeah, sure.
And seeing just a little piece of it.
Yeah, caption this posts are, people love them.
Yeah.
Posting all kinds of crazy toilets in the kitchen, the core stuff that you come across.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it works though. It works.
That's great.
So I was at a local Remax brokerage from 2017 to essentially the beginning of 21. So right at almost 4 years. And ironically enough, a buddy of mine who's not even a real estate agent mentioned EXP to me one time. He sent me a link of an article. He's like, hey, have you heard of this? And I said, I've heard of it. I don't know much about it. And I just started doing back to like what I did in my own neighborhood. I started doing my own research and I'd read a little bit here and there and I'd read. And literally over the course of a year, I learned a lot. And then I did a deal with who is now my sponsor, Virginia Franchisi. I did a deal with her and it was really eye-opening because not only about EXP, and we'll get there, but she taught me a lot about, okay, here's some systems I have in place. The funny story is I was angry at her because she wouldn't answer her phone. It was 8 o'clock on a Saturday night and she would not respond. It's funny, we always look back on it and laugh because she literally has systems in place and people in place, something that I didn't have, and I was really jealous of it. And we ended up having lunch and I hit it off, and next thing I'm like, oh, she's telling me all the good things about EXP. She's telling me the things that like, hey, here are things that aren't necessarily perfect like any brokerage, but they're getting better, and here's the things we do well. The stock program is huge. I think one thing that like really catapulted me was I love the flexibility of being able to build a team how I want to build a team. And I didn't have that where I was. And then you add in the fact that I'm wearing my logo here, but our logo, and I couldn't put that on a Remax sign. And at some point and I was discovering this, as you mentioned earlier, you want your brand in front of people. My brand in my neighborhood where I was selling 20 houses a year was another brokerage. And I realized how valuable I need me on there. Right? Yeah. And so that, along with the stock, along with the fact that I could build a team, my business partner and I could build a team how we wanted, was just the icing on the cake. It was
and I think about many people got into real estate because they wanted to own their own business.
Yes.
They wanted to build their own business. What does building your own business mean? It means ownership. It means owning something. And it means being able to make your own decisions, having your own brand, having your own presence. So many people go to brokerages where they don't have ownership.
No.
They're really just renting their career and they're working for somebody else's logo. So really all they've decided, it's just they're just getting a salary from someone else rather than actually owning their own company. When they leave, they don't have anything they can sell. They don't have a brand that can be transferred. They just, if you go back to, I don't know if you've ever read the book E-Myth, but really you've just created another job for yourself. You didn't create a business. You just created a high-paying job. Now, nothing wrong with a high-paying job, but if your goal is to build your own business, then working for a Remax, for instance, is not the way to do that.
It's funny you say that because we always compare as agents, right? We tell people you don't want to rent a home, you want to own a home, right? Yeah. But yet here are thousands and thousands of people who essentially, like that's a great way to put it, is renting your own business. And there's a lot of good things about a lot of brokerages. I just felt like the time was now, like I needed to make a change and I wanted to be somewhere that I wanted to be for a while. I didn't want to bounce around. I didn't want to just say, I'm going to go to this place and fly by night here and here. And that's why it took me a year of doing research and I saw how fast it was growing, and I wanted to own my own business and actually take control. And that was, and I was obviously a successful agent before, but there's a difference in being a successful agent. There's a difference between running your own business, and there's even a difference of then throwing all that in there and running a team and owning a team, building all that. And it was a no-brainer for me. It made the most sense, and technology-wise, it just fit what we were trying to do.
That's awesome. Totally shifting gears on you. Yeah. We're heading into, by all accounts, what may be a very difficult year in 2023. Challenging. Certainly, there's opportunity to be had. But we got to go out and get it. So what are you doing differently? How are you thinking or approaching things differently heading into to next year to set you and your team up for success?
So I think the main thing we've said is I'm a big advocate of you can only control what you can control, right?
Yep.
And we can't control rates. I wish we could. We can't control surplus. We can't control inventory. We can't control those things. What we can control is work ethic, and we can control what we do with our time and time management, right? And with those two things, you have to do the right things. And I've told people, again, like going back to what we were talking about earlier, find a niche. This is a perfect time where you're not necessarily showing houses every single day to find a niche. And that's what we're actually having our sales meeting tonight. Monthly sales meeting is here in 2.5 hours. And I'm actually gonna be talking to our team literally about this. So it's like a nice warm up, but here's what the market's doing. We all know what it's doing. We can't control that part, right? But we can control our activities and our money making production and our money making activities. So I always say this, get off your you know what and go knock on doors, go do things, go network. I am weirdly excited about going back to the basics and going back and knocking on doors, especially now that I've got 5 years of confidence. I have no doubt that I can go knock on a door and tell people, here's what we can do. Now, does that mean we're going to get a listing tomorrow? Not necessarily. And I think a lot of it is in real estate, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, but a lot of people were spoiled the last couple of years because the business came to them. And if you do these things, I say this, a couple months, a year ago, you literally might go knock on a door and they might say, okay, you can sell my house this Saturday. People were just okay with it.
And by the end of the weekend, it would be sold.
Throw some pictures. Yeah. And it's sold. I think a lot of the thing is we're going to be teaching too is patience and making sure that when you do these activities, you may not see something for 3 months. You may not see something. A lot of new agents on our team, you've got to stay the course and you've got to do things day to day, whether that's, and we're big advocates of working our COI, absolutely working it and getting those touches and making people, it doesn't matter if they open that email, but they see your name on the email, that's what you want.
100%. And I think too that people seeing the other sellers would say, oh, this must be a great time to be in the market. This must be a great time to be a real estate agent. And in some ways it was, but as a listing agent, one of the things that we have to market, the main thing that we have to market is our listings. And we market the heck of it out of our listings for our sellers, but also because that's evidence of success. That's a way that other potential sellers can see us doing our work. It's a little on the job marketing. If something sells in 17.2 seconds, we don't have a chance to do that.
No.
Nobody thinks, oh, look, wasn't the realtor amazing? They're annoyed because it sold so quickly.
You're right.
So I think there's an opportunity for us heading into this spring where we can really market the heck out of our product and can really get back to the basics of doing a great job. And that's an opportunity to market ourselves for weeks and months, whereas before we were able to do that for 17 seconds. I think I'm optimistic that there's some opportunity for us for those of us with listings, for those of us with a thriving business, to really double down and to find success in that.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You're gonna have to do it. I keep saying that. And because so many people, the 17.2 seconds is funny because we have a couple friends of ours that we have a group thread. We're all agents, lenders, and we joke about all the time. We would just joke about, hey, this agent posted, hey, sold this house in 48 hours. It's actually doing you a disservice. And in so many ways, but like you said, you don't really get a chance to market the home and show that you're different in this way. And everything moves at such a rapid pace. I'm excited in a weird way. Like I said earlier, I think what you said about going back to the basics is what I was alluding to. I'm excited to go do the things that I've had on these, and to be honest, things that I didn't have time for the last year or two. Not only didn't have to, I didn't have the time building a team and selling homes to do these things. And I'm excited to go back and do it and put your feet forward and see the results 3, 6, 9, 12 months later.
It's awesome. Aaron, that is a great place to land the plane. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate you.
And folks, if you're watching and you're making a move to the Kansas City area, or you just like to talk to Aaron more about EXP and maybe even joining his team, then we'll include links to his socials and how to reach him in the description. And Aaron, thanks for joining me, and best of luck to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you.